As we speak, they're debating impeaching Donald Trump for the, count them, second time. Historic, in one term. He couldn't put together one popular vote victory, but 2 impeachments, and much warranted. Is this the exact thing I'd want him impeached for? Well, certainly for this, but there's so many other things that he will never face impeachment charges for, but it is happening. It's not there yet, JR. They've cleared a couple of procedural hurdles. They're moving towards it. It is a slow process, but at some point today, he will be impeached for the second time.
Yeah, and this is despite all of the pushback from Republicans like Joe Manchin and the other Republicans that are in the Senate that are saying this is not going to go anywhere. This is a waste of time. This is a hindrance on Biden's transition. I thought there's been plenty of things that have been hindering Biden's transition, namely the Trump administration. But anyways, despite all of these scare tactics and hurdles that they're saying may hinder other things, or even make this just like ill-advised, again, as Manchin said, we're still gonna go forward, which I'm glad to hear. And I didn't note the degree to which these elected officials, these lawmakers that were threatened last week, would take it as far as going on to the next stage of these type of things. But it's looking like this is beginning to get some bipartisan steam building, which actually will always surprise me, and I still don't believe it until I see a vote.
That's a good point, which we haven't seen yet. A buildup of a couple of Republicans in the House, but maybe in the Senate too. We're going to be discussing that in a little second. As we proceed though, let's see. I want to talk about what happened last night. So there was effectively it was mostly a party line House vote to get Pence to invoke the 25th Amendment. Before the House passed that resolution, Pence sent a letter to Speaker Nancy Pelosi making clear that he has no intention of doing it, claiming such a move would, quote, set a terrible precedent. So he's not gonna do it, and he is blocking that. It could totally be done. He could try to do that. And so just bear that in mind as you're giving him all this credit for doing the right thing by not trying to overturn the election last Wednesday, which again, I would love to point out, he couldn't have done no matter what he wanted to do. People are giving him credit for stuff that's just an 8chan fever dream. He couldn't overturn it. He could have given a speech or something. He could have cried on the House floor. He couldn't overturn the election. And as a general rule, don't give people credit for stuff they couldn't do anyway.
Yeah, he had the nerve to stand up to Trump and tell him, I can't do that, Mr. President. Not I won't, not I refuse, not this is madness. I can't do it. That has nothing to do with him. That's him stating what anyone else could have stated. You can't do it. All he said was I.
Yeah. Well, also, okay, well, if this is the standard, I would like to give credit to the Constitution, because the Constitution also told Trump that he couldn't do it. And I would argue the Constitution got in there first. It said it hundreds of years ago. So I'm gonna give the Constitution a bit more credit than Mike Pence. Also, Mike Pence says it would set a terrible precedent. How exactly would it set a terrible precedent? The idea that after you encourage a mob to kill you, Mike Pence, they wanted to kill you. And he was the one in the lead up to that saying, oh yeah, I'm big friends with Mike Pence, but if he doesn't do what he should do, then maybe I don't like him as much. And then a mob goes in there chanting, hang Mike Pence. It would set a terrible precedent to impeach him after that. That makes a ton of sense.
That terrible precedent that it would set is holding elected officials accountable, specifically presidents accountable for their actions, their words, and inciting a riot, an insurrection, an attempted coup in the Capitol building. That's what it would set a terrible precedent for. And why would it set that terrible precedent in Mike Pence's opinion? Because it's a Republican president that would go down in history as the one that gets kicked out, or they have to invoke the 25th Amendment to get him out based off of what he did. So forever, what they're concerned about is the future name of the Republican Party. Not about what just happened, not about the future of the country, not about the legacy that this will leave. Because by the way, it will still go down in history that way because that's just the truth. But what they can't do is acknowledge it and allow that to actually happen, because that would hurt their party. When he's long gone, he's concerned about his party more than he is concerned about the survival of his country. Gotta be honest, they just don't care. Even after all of it, he is a servant to the party. He actually doesn't care about the country.
I wish I could see in 50 years, 75 years. Assuming I'm still alive, that the Pop-Tarts haven't caught up to me. And the world will either be one of two things. The way it's going, we're gonna be like scrounging through the countryside for the last bits of food. Or if we do what we need to do, I'll exist purely in the form of energy in some sort of galaxy spanning network. But at that point, whichever it is, I will turn to the mutant child, or I will telepathically communicate with everyone simultaneously and say, what do you remember about that time when he was impeached twice and why it happened? It is gonna be fascinating to see what the media is saying about it, what academia is saying about it when we're removed by decades. But we're living in it right now, and it is crazy. I almost swore there. It is crazy either way. I can't swear here. In the post-apocalyptic hellscape, there I can swear. On the internet data web, I don't know. I don't know what the rules will be. I'm really worried about tech CEOs though. But anyway, crazy times.
Yeah, this is what we have to realize. That I was just saying this to my wife the other day, that our kids are living through this historic time, and they know it, but they kind of don't know it, because you have to have the gauge of the rest of history and other things that have happened, and how we had this insurrection in the Capitol building, and how that just doesn't happen here. Domestic insurrection in the Capitol building, where the Confederate flag was waved around in the middle of, which is, by the way, never happened. Like you would think, if you want to go through some history books and be like, oh yeah, so it was that time back in the Civil War when Confederates stormed the Capitol, and they had a great battle victory there. No, in 2021 is when it happened.
For more political news, breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedamagereport. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.